In today's video, we have some NHL offseason trade talk around the Montreal Canadiens and the St. Louis Blues. Plus, we have some more updates on the Ottawa Senators sale. We also have some updates on the NHL heading to Australia. Lots of injury updates, signing, and the Bruins have continued to make history this year. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot to cover in today's video. Lots of news and some trade rumors from the offseason to take a look at. The Boston Bruins today beat the St. Louis Blues in overtime 4-3, becoming only the fourth team in NHL history to have 60 wins during the regular season. So this team has been near the top or at the top of the NHL standings the entire NHL season. They're an absolute wagon. Should be really tough to beat in the playoffs. Obviously, I already won the President's Trophy. First place in their division, of course, goes along with that. And like I said, they're going to be a real tough team to beat come playoff time. So the Bruins continue to make history. They were real curious to see what they can accomplish come playoff time. We do have news from the NHL waiver wire today as well. The Chicago Blackhawks today placed forward Joey Anderson on waivers. Of course, Anderson, the former Toronto Maple Leaf, was acquired by the Blackhawks in that trade, which was just a few days before the trade deadline between Toronto and Chicago, which allowed the Toronto Maple Leafs to acquire defenseman Jake McCabe and forward Sam Lafferty. So far, since going to Chicago, he's appeared in 18 games and put up 5 points. So he'll be on waivers and he can be demoted to the American Hockey League. Should he clear this time of year, I would suspect that's likely going to happen, and the Hawks can replace him on the roster with another young prospect, give somebody else an opportunity to take his spot. Of course, tonight's a historic night for the Penguins as well. They're doing battle with the Philadelphia Flyers. As I record this video, they're currently leading, but it's Chris Letang's game number 1,000 tonight. So certainly, a long, very successful career for Letang, but he's also battled through a lot of personal things, including injuries. He's dealt with stroke issues. Letang has been phenomenal for the Penguins throughout his career. Multiple Stanley Cups, all kinds of great offensive success. Except he's had times where he's missed long extended stretches too because of injuries and neck issues, stroke, all that. Like, he's been through a lot. He's been an absolute warrior for that franchise. Of course, he along with Malkin and Crosby been there for a long time. See if they can pull off one more championship before it's all said and done for the three of them. But certainly want to congratulate Chris Letang on a really great milestone, 1,000 games, especially with what he's been through. No easy accomplishment. That's why there's been very few NHL players in the grand history of things to actually meet that accomplishment. We have another signing as well. Jed Caulfield, speaking of Pittsburgh, Jed Caulfield was traded by the Penguins. He's a college player who was drafted by the Penguins back in 2019. Had made it clear to the Penguins he wasn't likely going to sign, so they traded his rights to the Anaheim Ducks just done more a couple days ago, and the Ducks have already signed him. So certainly that's a place he was interested in going. The Anaheim Ducks have signed Caulfield to a 2-year entry-level contract. He's the 22-year-old player coming out of college who was recently acquired and drafted by the Pittsburgh Penguins. So we'll see if he gets a chance to get into a game here before the end of the season. The Ottawa Senators had to recall yet another goaltender. Their goaltending battles this year has definitely been their Achilles heel. They had to recall young goalie Levi Muriel, who had just come over from Finland. It wasn't more than a week ago his season wrapped up in Finland. He came over to North America, made his American Hockey League debut just a day ago, which was a phenomenal game, mind you. He had a 41-save shutout in his AHL debut. Mats Auger, in yesterday's game against the Toronto Maple Leafs, after the second period, had to come out of the game because he was sick, wasn't feeling well. Don't know the exact details. It's just that's all we know, wasn't feeling well. And, of course, then today, the Sens had to take off on a road trip for 3 games starting in Columbus. And, of course, he wasn't feeling well, so couldn't go. So Muriel joins them. On the bench, Cam Talbot gave up 2 quick goals early in the game to Columbus. The Sens settled in, but certainly another young goalie that might get a taste of NHL action here. Muriel is yet another member of the 2020 NHL draft class that the Sens have had a lot of success with. A lot of players on the NHL roster playing right now. But the amount of goal injuries this team has had is ridiculous. With Sogard out now, Mandolisi's been out, Ferguson's all out. They've had to sign guys to tryouts to keep the teams in Belleville and their East Coast League team in Atlanta stocked with enough goaltenders to get their games played. So it's been tough, and certainly going to be an area of organizational depth that they certainly need to accomplish and review and look at in the offseason as a top priority. The Cam Talbot for Philip Gustafsson trade is looking like an absolute disaster. The hot summer of Pierre Dorion had a lot of things go really well. I think majority, 95% of the moves he made have worked out very, very well for the team. And I thought this was a good deal for them at first as well, because Gustafson's been inconsistent the past couple of years going between Ottawa and Belleville in the American Hockey League, but he goes to Minnesota and absolutely thrives. I mean, they are a stronger defensive team right now based on the Senators the past couple of years, so it's not surprising that he improved, but he improved drastically. So you hate to see your young prospects move on to other franchises and thrive. So certainly in the area they need to watch and be careful with here. They have Sogard, Marlainen, and Mandolese. Like, they need to make sure they take care of these guys and make sure that at least one of them turns out to be the long-term goalie of the future, hopefully, because it's much needed, that's for sure. Red Wings top prospect Marco Kasper came over as well from Europe after his season wrapped up. He's making his NHL debut today as well. The Detroit Red Wings are doing battle as I record this with the Toronto Maple Leafs, so good luck to Marco Kasper. Be curious to see what he can accomplish in the NHL. The Habs have announced that the defenseman David Savard is done for the season with a knee injury. We had heard he was out for a little while the other day, and they've upgraded that to done for the year. So David Savard joins a long list of casualties in Montreal that are going to be out for the rest of the season. The Winnipeg Jets as well confirmed that Cole Perfetti will not be able to return during the regular season. He should be okay for playoffs, should he be able to clinch qualify for the first round. Of course, they're currently in the heated battle with the Calgary Flames for the last and final playoff spot in the Western Conference. So we'll see. But if they get in, he should be able to join them. And we saw Maple Leaf goalie Matt Murray leave the game as well today against Detroit. As I mentioned, Kasper's making his debut in that game. But Lucas Raymond slipped, lost an edge, and slid into Murray from the backside of him, so he didn't see him coming, and basically took up both of his legs, because he was Murray standing with his back to the play. Raymond comes in behind. Like I said, it was a complete accident by the looks of things for sure. But took him out, fell hard, and he left the game. Samsonov had to come in. He did not come back out for the second period, so obviously he's hurt to the point that he can't even back up. So I would suspect, wouldn't be shocking at this point if we see Samsonov and Joseph Wall for the playoffs, but I know Matt Murray certainly had his fair share of injuries this year. That was the moral of the story during his time in Ottawa, and even though he's probably played a little bit better in Toronto than he did in Ottawa, the injury part has not left him and continues to plague him and affect his career and ability to really be an impact goaltender. Now, speaking of the Ottawa Senators sale, there was some talk about the team again on 32 Thoughts segment last night on Hockey Night in Canada. Elliot Friedman made mention that a lot of the other groups are kind of becoming concerned that they may not be able to beat out Ryan Reynolds. This is such a strong marketing campaign that Reynolds is prepared to go with here that he may be really tough to beat between him and the Remington group. And he said that he's such a popular figure, and apparently he's also presented his marketing strategy as part of their bidding process to buy the team, that other groups are taking notice. And like I said, they're concerned they're going to be up against too tough another opponent here, and that Reynolds might be just too hard to beat. But as Friedman mentioned, from the NHL's perspective, it's kind of hard to imagine how they could let the sale go through and have Reynolds not be a part of it in some way, because he's been such a central figure here in the show, and he could be a big part of the marketing and just the use his reputation and his connections to be able to help grow the team in the game would be huge, considering what he's done with the soccer team he bought and other ventures that he's done business-wise. I think it's impossible that he's not involved in some capacity, but it was also mentioned about the amount of debt that the Senators are carrying. All of this will be wiped out with the sale. The purchase price will cover the debt, and of course the remaining amount will go to the Melnick family. But it's revealed that the Senators are as much as $400 or $450 million, at least that's a rumored amount, of debt on that franchise. So it's, not surprising to find out that they're in the red and that they're in debt, but I didn't think it would be that much of a large figure. So certainly you got to wonder if it's, is it the case of under the Melnick era, was the team mismanaged? Is a lot of that could be from pandemic, obviously lost revenue, but it just really makes you wonder how it got to be quite that bad. And if it's been that bad, why Melnick, when he was alive, didn't want to consider selling the team sooner? Or was it just a case that he never really got the offer he wanted? But it's also made known that he never really made it publicly known that he wanted to sell. It was never like it is now, where there's a bidding process. There was some, interested parties, I believe, that had approached him over the years, but nothing really ever materialized or really went anywhere. So kind of a shocking figure to find out that it's really that bad on the debt side of things there. Also on the 32 Thoughts segment, they talked about the further updates on the NHL going to Australia next year. It sounds like there was talk before with the Bruins being one of the teams that might go. Now Jeff Marek is saying it's pretty much confirmed. It's not 100%, of course, until the league announces it, but it sounds pretty much like it's going to be the Los Angeles Kings and the Arizona Coyotes that will be heading over to take place. So we don't know if it's going to be exhibition games or if it's going to be a case of a couple of regular season games like we've seen NHL do in Europe, with maybe a couple of them counting for regular season. We'll see how that works out. But I would imagine in the as the season winds down before we get to the playoffs, I would imagine that's likely going to be announced, confirmed. It's hard to say exactly when, but it shouldn't be too much longer. Now, let's see, rumors for to take a look at here for today. I want to start with the St. Louis Blues. Now, the St. Louis Blues today were officially eliminated from playoff contention when they lost in overtime to the Boston Bruins. I mean, we kind of knew that was going to be coming sooner than later, given where their spot in the standings were and how many points back they were. But at the same time, now that's official, you're going to start to see the rumor mill kind of pick up the pace a little bit for what they might be looking to do in the offseason. Of course, seen some articles today suggesting that we already seen them kind of retool the forward group a little bit, picking up some forwards near the NHL trade deadline that have actually been playing well. Guys like Varanen and Kapanen have actually fit in a little bit better than you would have expected in St. Louis, and could be some good finds for Doug Armstrong and company there. So there could be additional changes, but they've already made some in that regard. But the blue line is going to be the next area that they likely target. There was a lot of talk around Colt Parayko, Torrey Krug, around the trade deadline. Of course, nothing materialized. They would not be easy deals to do, given how much term and money is left on those contracts. But certainly a case where they need to change things up back there. That much we know for sure. The blue line has not been successful in its current state. They're not the only potential trade candidates, but they're the most likely here, given their long stature of contract and term and money left on the team. Obviously, moving a contract like that will give them much needed flexibility, and at the same time could hopefully help them recoup and try to get a little bit younger on the back end here as well. At this point in time, there's not necessarily any teams linked to either defenseman. Not going to be easy. There's some obviously no trade clauses mixed in there in their contracts too, which certainly complicates things. But I would suspect that now that they're eliminated from the playoffs, or season's almost over, as we get to the end of the regular season and start to approach the draft, I would imagine you're going to hear more things heat up around the St. Louis Blues decor and possible members of that could be moved. And I would suspect at least one prominent guy gets swapped out to change up the makeup of that blue line. Now, on the Montreal Canadiens, I want to take a look at a couple of things here. One, apparently, is from a free agent standpoint, a player that they're not likely going to bring back is forward Jonathan Drouin. I think it's fair to say his time in Montreal hasn't worked out. Has been underwhelming. He's dealt with a lot on and off the ice, and it's probably best for him to maybe continue playing somewhere else, get a fresh start, and see if he can get his career back on track. I seen an article today suggesting that one team to look for that might have interest in him would be the Vegas Golden Knights. Of course, the Golden Knights are a team like a bunch of teams around the league that are going to be really tight up against the cap, and are probably going to be looking to make some additions in that middle part of the lineup, middle six forward group. So certainly Jerard is a player who's likely going to have to take a major haircut on his current salary and play for, I'm not necessarily saying league minimum, but I don't think it's going to be too much more than that. You're probably looking anywhere from league minimum to that 1.5 range. There's going to be a bunch of players that obviously didn't have great seasons this year that are probably going to be taking a step down, and he's one of them. So could they get him on a cheap one-year deal to kind of reprove himself? That's certainly a possibility. Wherever he signs, that's likely going to be the kind of contract he does have to take. But Vegas is a rumored team to look for should Jonathan Drouin hit the open market, which is widely expected to happen. But I know according to Montreal Hockey now, they do expect there to be some more movement, especially on the blue line. They referenced in a new article that Joel Edmondson likely is going to get moved. Of course, they set that the deadline, which we already knew. There was a lot of talk about the player, some interest, but nothing really materialized, mainly due to concerns on his health and injury status, which has kept him out a large part of the season. If he had been healthy and played more leading into the deadline, he likely would have been dealt at that point. But since it hasn't happened, look for that to pick up in the offseason. Of course, Edmondson's a player with a lot of experience, long reach, good size. He obviously has a lot of playoff experience as well. So teams are looking to add somebody with size on that left side. Makes a lot of sense they would acquire here. So widely expected that he could be another player to be looking out for. Also mentions with all the defensive prospects and defensive depth in the organization now, if the Montreal Canadiens decide they are open to moving some prospects to upgrade other areas of the team, there's even some other prospect D that will have a really hard time getting playing time at the NHL level that they could consider moving, including guys like Matthias Norlinder and William Trudeau. I mean, they're obviously haven't been really been too much in the mix yet for any NHL time. But considering the amount of young defensemen they already have, they got NHL experience this year, and then they have more coming, it's widely fair to say that these guys are going to have a heck of a battle to ever get NHL time. So it makes sense if the Habs want to make some moves, that they would be prospects they'd be willing to part with if they want to be able to upgrade other areas of the team. But certainly look for another guy to be possibly on the move. Mike Hoffman, and there was another forward in Montreal that they'd love to be able to move on from. At least he'd be down to one less year in his contract. There wasn't a ton of interest in the deadline, so it may not be, it might not be something they can do, but something that they definitely want to. I think he'd be interested in moving on as well to have more of a chance to win. But I'm not sure, depending on the level of interest, it might be a case where Hoffman has to stay in Montreal, hopefully have a better season, and maybe he'll garner interest at the deadline because he'd be at the end of his contract, so he'd be a pending UFA. It could be a deadline pickup, which would be probably a little bit more likely to see something. But other guys like Armia, Gallagher, because of their contracts, I'm sure Montreal will be open to moving at least one of those guys. But again, going to be tough given their contract situation. So it's hard to say. Another couple of rumors regarding Habs signings with some of their young players. Contract talks apparently have begun with Cole Caulfield. I expect that is quite likely, if things go well, to be a long-term mega deal. We'll see where things go. Obviously he's represented by some top NHL talent here. And Pat Brisson, I would suspect he's going to be looking for top dollar for the young sniper. They could go in a bridge deal. Hard to say where things go on that, but I would suspect, based on negotiations, it may not be something that takes that happens quickly. I mean, I know Montreal Hockey now expressed that it could be something that drags on. So the good news is at least they've started talking early. And a guy like Raphael Harvey-Pinard, who's been found money for Montreal, scoring at a ridiculous pace that nobody would have predicted. Look for him. They probably get somewhere around a 3-year extension, maybe in that $2 million range. I mean, I know based on where he's scoring at a pace now, that might seem low, but he's still relatively unproven in the grand scheme of things. Some guys need always to do that in a much longer period of time before they get the longer-term, bigger money deals. So look for Harvey-Pinard, 3 years, maybe in that 175 to 225 range might be something where he falls in line as well. But we'll see. I'm sure they're already talking to him. Every time he scores, the price is going to go up. So we'll see where that goes. Let me know your thoughts on all today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.